Hi, I am Damian Goldvarg, immediate past president of the International Coach Federation, and we are here in San Diego at the Chapter 13 APA conference. And David Peterson, director of coaching and leadership at Google, has been one of the presenters, and I asked David to share with us today some of the key points of his presentation. He talked about coaching and leadership and what are the key elements that coaches should be thinking of about coaching in the future. So, David, what would you like to share with us today?
There's two things that I think really stand out from how I started thinking about coaching and what I really tried to emphasize in my talk. One is that the future is going to be different than what we've seen in the past. So coaches have to be prepared to coach leaders on facing novel, unforeseen, complex, ambiguous challenges that they have no experience with. So how do you help people think through when they're faced with a decision or a challenge that they've never faced before? And so one of the things coaches can help leaders do is seek out more novel, unusual experiences, expose themselves to challenges and diverse experiences, diverse perspectives, different kinds of people in a much more intentional way. So leaders often feel like I've just got to be very task focused, I have to stay on track, and instead learning to step into unknown situations, deliberately seek diverse, challenging situations, and do it in a more planful way. To get the most value out of that, leaders have to take the time to reflect. What did I see? What did I learn? How might I apply that somewhere else? And so there's tremendous value for coaches to help leaders step into new situations and then step back and reflect. What have I learned from that? Where else might that be relevant? What's the next thing for me to do? So that's one thing that's very challenging for leaders to do without some support. The second thing is coaches themselves, I think, need to really start thinking about how do we upgrade our own skills? How do we prepare ourselves for helping leaders through challenges that they've never faced? And so I think we need to do some of the same learning that we're recommending for our clients. How can we expose ourselves to more diverse clients, seek out novel, diverse types of challenging clients that we haven't faced before, and think instead of how do I find the easiest clients to work with, how do I find the most difficult clients to work with? Because that's what will stretch us and prepare us for adding value in the future.
Wow, that sounds really interesting because this is exactly what I was thinking as a coach. What are the things that we can concretely do? So I want to invite you to consider, based on your specialty and based on your area of work, what could be the kind of thing that can stretch you and can help you to look outside of what you're used to. What are the ways, David, that you suggest to coaches to prepare for that?
So I think reading broadly, reading outside your areas of comfort. But if you think about where is technology going, what's happening in other parts of the world, how can we become ourselves more global thinkers, expose ourselves to what's going on in different regions? Can we find clients who come from different regions? So again, exposing ourselves to different challenges through reading, through working with different kinds of people, and in some sense, find a new area for a deep dive. So really try to learn something about a different discipline or a different field that might be relevant. Strategic thinking, innovation, design thinking, these are all areas that are fairly current right now in terms of what's on people's minds. So those are great places to get started. But the more you think about what's happening in technology, what's happening in economics that is just around the corner, that if I'm more familiar with that, I can really help my clients.
That sounds really interesting. And here at the conference, for example, we have a surgeon who talked about leadership. And at the beginning, I thought, well, what is an interesting guest for the conference? And then I thought, wow, it's interesting just to be able to look at something from a completely different perspective and then see how that relates to the work that we do every day.
For many years, I was one of the main coaches at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota when I lived there, and it was fascinating to see what is it like in a very different context. So coaching surgeons, coaching operating room physicians, coaching physicians who have moved into administrative roles and leadership roles. So it taught me a lot by investing in really understanding this very different context and this very different set of leadership challenges.
So here is an opportunity for coaches to consider how do you want to invest in your development. And yesterday I was in a panel and somebody asked, I was talking about supervision. And somebody asked, what about getting a supervisor to work with you from a completely different discipline? And the first reaction was, well, it's supposed to be an expert, somebody who is going to be challenging us. But then I thought, well, that can be really cool to have somebody who is completely from a different field, who can provide some idea, who can challenge us from a completely different paradigm. Why not?
So I think if you look at a range of people that you can learn from. So you might not have someone be a long-term kind of coach or mentor, but what could you learn from 2 or 3 conversations with them? And then cycle through to who else would be looking at this from a very different perspective, and how can I work with them over a short period of time? So you might have different people from different backgrounds playing different roles in supporting your development.
That sounds really, really great. So, David, any last thought before we wrap up this short meeting?
Just one thing that I think coaching is at risk of not keeping pace with the level of change that's happening in the world around us. Right now, coaching is very cool. People are very excited about being coaches. Everyone wants to work with a coach. So it's a very good time for us. But if we don't invest in ourselves and in our future, then I think we run the risk of falling behind and not keeping pace with the level of change that's happening around us.
Thank you, David. I think it was great having you today with us. And thank you for listening.
My pleasure, Damian. Take care.